Welcome to Soho Square in sunny London. Behind me is the headquarters of the British Board of Film Classification, the BBFC. And I'm here to talk about something that should be all over the press and just isn't, and that is one of the biggest threats to free speech in modern British history. Before I come to that, let me just explain who these people are, the BBFC. The BBFC started about 1912, and until 1984 they were known as the British Board of Film Censorship. In 1984 they went through a makeover, because 1984 being 1984, if you're an Orwell fan, is probably not a great name to have. So they changed their name from the British Board of Film Censorship to the British Board of Film Classification. That doesn't mean they stopped censoring things. It was, you know, it was a nice friendly little makeover. Also in 1984, as the result of a huge moral panic in the media about video horror films, the BBFC, which had been a private business representing the film industry, was suddenly awarded government powers to censor videos and DVDs. So in 1984, the Video Recordings Act was passed, and it made it illegal to publish a video that had not first been classified by the BBFC. And this was a sweeping piece of censorship, because video was just beginning to become an important format. And the key thing about video was that for the first time it put filmmaking into the hands of anyone with a few £100 to spare. So they could film it and they could copy the tapes and sell them, and there was nothing to stop that flow of information. And obviously, to a government and to a censorship state in Britain, which had always controlled the flow of information, video was a threat. They had control over TV, they had control over what could be shown in cinemas, but they had no control over video. And so in 1984, the BBFC, which, as I say, is a private business, was given a government monopoly to censor video. And if you sold a video without going to the BBFC first for a certificate, then you were breaking the law and you could be fined, whether or not the video was legal, whatever the content of the video was. And so since 1984, if you wanted to put out a video or later on a DVD, you had to send it to the BBFC and pay the nice people lots of money to sit and watch it second by second, and then tell you if they were going to give you a certificate or make cuts to it. And if they wanted it cut, then sure, you could appeal to the BBFC, but ultimately their decision was final. So here we have a private business appointed by government to censor, and no comeback for people whose work has been censored. The job of the BBFC, the stuff they cut, is supposedly content that is liable to make it to deprave and corrupt its viewer. So remember, that's what they're here for. They're here to stop people being depraved and corrupted. And one of the first things they did in 1984, as soon as they got power over video, was to ban pornography. And when I say they banned pornography, they banned pornography. They banned all of it. The soft stuff, the hard stuff, the dodgy foreign stuff, everything was banned. And this was an incredible decision, because it was made by a private company operating under a government monopoly. There was never a discussion in Parliament. There was never a vote in Parliament. These guys sitting here, very well paid, decided to ban pornography. And that situation lasted until the year 2000, when the porn industry finally challenged this in court and said, who the hell are you to deny British people the right to look at porn? Which incidentally was available all over Europe, all over the United States. It was only Britain where you couldn't buy pornography legally. And as an aside, it's interesting to think that the examiners who look at all the content, they're the guys who have to look at all the most depraved and corrupting content that's ever been made. They have to look at the stuff that nobody else gets to see. So this building is probably full of depraved and corrupted people, which probably we should wake up to. If we might make Britain a safer place by arresting all the BBFC examiners, because after all, if they're doing what they say they're doing, then they themselves have been depraved by the content they're watching. But of course, content doesn't deprave and corrupt people. This is a nice little learner. And as I say, in 2000, pornography was legalized. They were forced to accept pornography, and they created a new certificate, the R18, to cover hardcore porn. But still in the UK, they decided that randomly almost, that all sorts of acts were illegal, and they refused to accept all sorts of things that would be perfectly legal in most of Europe. So pornography was legalized at R18, and everyone was happy. And by then nobody cared anyway, because the web was becoming so widespread that everyone got to see what they wanted anyway. And the BBFC began to look irrelevant, because we could go, and if people weren't allowed to publish it in the UK, then they could look at Swedish or Spanish or American or Brazilian or Japanese porn sites, and the BBFC were becoming irrelevant, as were Ofcom, whose job it is to censor TV, and who censor TV to an even tighter level than the BBFC does DVD. So, you know, this is fine. This is history. This is the old days, and we have the internet today, and the internet has provided us unprecedented free speech on a global scale. But behind the scenes, they've been lobbying, and not just the BBFC and Ofcom, but the religious right and the conservative right and radical feminists and all sorts of vested interests have been lobbying to get the claws of the censors back into the internet. You know, these people have been losing control for the last 15 years. And I've written a book, Porn Panic, which you can go and buy, and which covers some of the background to the way that moral panic after moral panic was fed to the media to say that porn's damaging our children, porn's damaging our teenagers, porn is damaging to women. None of this backed by evidence, but each time bumping government into doing something about a problem which by and large didn't exist. And then last Friday, it was suddenly announced that the BBFC, which today only has remit over video and DVD, is going to get the power to block websites at will. So here we have a private business again being given the power to block websites on the internet. Now, this has never happened, not just in the UK, but as far as I know, in any democratic country. We, as the UK, our foreign secretary and our diplomats go around the world telling China and Iran and Zimbabwe and whoever that the internet must remain free, that censorship is a bad thing, that democratic states don't censor content. And now here we are, the UK leading the world in doing what we've been telling other states not to do. And so the new law is going to be called the Digital Economy Bill. It's currently in Parliament. It's due to be voted on in perhaps spring of 2017. And when it passes, it specifies that illegal porn sites are the remit of the BBFC, and the BBFC, and now we hear that the BBFC will have the power to block them if they break UK law. Now that sounds all very well, except for a few things. First of all, British law when it comes to pornography is fucking insane. So it bans all sorts of things that you can see pretty much anywhere else. Secondly, the definition of porn covers pretty much any type of sexual content, erotica, sex education, and especially BDSM porn, kink porn, whatever you want to call it. Perfectly legal in most countries. It features legal acts between consenting adults. You can do it in your bedroom, but if you film it, it's going to be banned. And I say this is the first time that a democratic country has introduced an internet censor with these kinds of powers. And we need to stop thinking about porn. This isn't about porn. Porn is a really good excuse to introduce these kinds of powers, because very few MPs are going to stand up in Parliament and question a bill that says it's going to protect children. But censorship never comes in by the front door. Nobody ever says we're going to take away your democratic rights to free speech. They say we're going to go after terrorists, or in this case they say we're going to protect your children from pornography. Now, if you listen to the people who are promoting this bill at the moment, then they say that something like 70 sites provide most of the UK's porn. So come on, they're just going to block these 70 sites and maybe a few more, and this will get the problem under control. The only problem is that, obviously, there are a few problems with this. First of all, obviously, if you block 70 sites, then people will go and look at 70 other sites. That, blocking 70 sites when there are millions out there, it is fairly pointless. But the problem is that this law, which they say is to block a few dozen porn sites, as it's actually drafted to block tens of millions of sites. They define pornography as pretty much any sexual or erotic image or video. And so any site, whether it's sex education, whether it's an erotica blog, whether it's an erotic stories blog with the odd picture, pretty much anything sexual will fall within the remit of the BBFC. And if it doesn't conform to their strict regulations, which includes age verifying all visitors before you let them see any content, then they're going to be blocked. And so, yeah, I mean, we need to watch out for the slippery language here. They're obviously going to say, oh, come on, we're not going to ban tens of millions of websites. We just want to go after the offending porn sites. But this law gives the BBFC the power to block tens of millions of websites. We should also remember that 3 years ago, when the home broadband filters were brought in, they were called porn filters, and the government had press releases talking about porn filters, and the newspapers, the press talks about porn filters, and there wasn't a great deal of noise until the day when they came in and it was discovered that these weren't porn filters. These were filters that blocked, in the case of Sky Broadband, they've been found to have blocked 19% of all websites on the internet. So this is just a beginning. They talk about porn, they create a porn panic, and then they introduce laws which will give them sweeping powers that go far beyond pornography. And this is a starting point. The BBFC, if you look at what the BBFC censors on DVD, you'll see that they cut far more than just pornographic content. Let's just, from their own website, let's see what the BBFC will cut on DVD. They will cut films that may promote the misuse of drugs, and any detailed portrayal of drug misuse likely to promote the activity may be cut. Or again, works which taken as a whole actively promote illegal behaviour may be cut or refused a classification. So this private business here has the power to cut or refuse classification to DVDs. We're a very censor country, and the only reason most people don't know that is because we have the internet, and the BBFC and Ofcom have no remit over the internet. That's all going to change next year. And so we're going to give these people the power to block websites. I'm sorry, but if you think these moralistic
The BBFC has received one complaint from a member of the public related to the video work titled Jerry Barnett Speaks Outside BBFC Headquarters. The complainant stated that the work contained a gendered slur which she considered offensive and hateful towards women. BBFC examiners reviewed the clip. At 12 minutes and 18 seconds, the speaker used the word cunts, apparently in relation to the media regulatory authorities. The BBFC values free expression and will not automatically cut all usages of such words. However, context is important. In this case, we have concluded that the word was used gratuitously, and in this context was calculated to cause offence. Furthermore, the word relates to a part of the female anatomy, and this usage could be considered sexist. As a government-approved media regulator, the BBFC has a duty to prevent hate speech against minority groups and women. We therefore recommend that the work be cut after 12 minutes and 18 seconds. Distribution of this work without the required cut will be a civil offence and may be met with a fine from Ofcom of up to £250,000. You may appeal this decision via the normal BBFC appeals process. The British Board of Film Classification, making the internet safer for you and your children.